This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Got an interesting tweet on the Gillette ad topic.
Yeah.
I don't understand people seeking out viewing an advertisement that isn't funny. So glad I haven't watched it. You don't understand people seeking out viewing the Gillette ad, especially because it isn't funny. I guess my response to that would be, if you ignore cultural rot, does the culture yet rot? If the answer to that is yes, then perhaps instances like the present Gillette ad and, as we found out, a previous Harry's ad
That they yanked yesterday.
should be confronted and discussed, not ignored. I mean, if you think, culture and the values reflected in societal interaction are important, I suppose. So interesting. Because it turns out companies spend millions and millions of dollars advertising on television and elsewhere because it's persuasive, because it has impact. You know what I mean?
And maybe Gillette just did this to get attention because they are getting a lot of attention around the world for this ad. Not an ad, by the way, that didn't show one razor. It's all right. They had another premise.
What I've seen, at least at the outside of the show, about 10 million views on their YouTube channel for their ad, running about 2.5 to 1 thumbs down. I suppose that's some modest positive takeaway. The other thing I mentioned, Harry's, just in case people are shopping for a new purveyor of razors and shaving products. Harry posted, Harry's, the razor outfit, tweeted a year ago November, "Today is International Men's Day. Believe it or not, that's a thing. Now more than ever, being a man demands introspection, humility, and optimism. To get a better tomorrow, we need to take a look at today." Boy, it's very Hallmarkian. And at the misguided stereotypes that got us here in the first place. David French picked this up at NRO, and he suggests that this Harry's offering that has since been taken down because Harry's is trying to capitalize on what Gillette's done to themselves is actually worse than the Gillette ad, because he suggests the Harry's message is good things are bad. What the Harry's ad did, since it's no longer available, is post aspirational male-oriented statements like be tough, be a rock, be a man, be the breadwinner, and cross them out. French characterizes that as almost like a parody of modern woke attacks on masculinity. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by the executive director of Touchstone Magazine. He's Doug Johnson, and he's the friend I mentioned yesterday.
Oh, that's right.
With the alternative ad that could be done, reclaiming masculinity and pointing out maybe some of the sources of these problems that Gillette tried to highlight in their ad, of predatory male conduct. Perhaps people take a little walk down memory lane of the last 2 years. You'll remember the things in common between a Harvey Weinstein and a Kevin Spacey and a Matt Lauer and a Charlie Rose and every other predatory male in Hollywood media, feminist men of the left, if you will. Doug Johnson, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Dan.
So you wrote a piece last year about the feminist man, the feminist gentleman. What is the feminist gentleman? Because a lot of men these days, men of the left influencing men across the spectrum, want to be considered feminist gentlemen.
Right. I took the phrase from an essay by Whittaker Chambers, who said when he was at Columbia, there was this, and I'm forgetting the phrase that they used, but there was a phrase one of his professors used to say, men of a certain stature and of a certain that have reached a certain rank and sociability in academia should have a certain freedom to do what they want. So that the men like Charlie Rose and Matt Lauer and those you're talking about, And, we saw the impact of it, that an elite, invariably very left-wing male should have a little bit more freedom to do what he wants in the world.
So this is Thomas Frank wrote about this, a man of the left. What's the matter with Kansas? When Harvey Weinstein was first exposed, pun intended, and he basically said the Hollywood people like Harvey Weinstein, they're feminists. Harvey Weinstein's famous initial statement about how he's focused on going after the NRA. Being a man of the left, being a feminist man in a place like Hollywood, was the way to get the license to behave like the cretin that Harvey Weinstein was.
Exactly. And also, let's take it from another angle with feminism. Alice von Hildebrand, she has a great interview with Eric Metaxas, and you can see online. And she makes the point that feminism is the enemy of femininity. That, the idea of a woman who preserves her femininity, who demands a lot from a man in terms of manners and proper behavior, that is the enemy of feminism. And it's a huge benefit to the man on the make, which is what the Harvey Weinsteins and the Matt Lauros are. It cuts across both sexes.
All right, well, with this Gillette ad, what bothers you most?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, what bothers me most is that it seems to be it's a couple things. It's so focused on stirring hatred. I mean, and what's fascinating to me about it is there's no way this came as a surprise. I assure you, Gillette with $40 billion in sales and part of the Procter & Gamble empire, they knew full well the reaction would be wholly negative. They focus grouped it fully, and they said, look, people are going to be yelling and screaming about this. We'll get our name out there. We'll be on every news program. Maybe we'll pull it in a few days and say we'll do an apology or something. But they're saying the way to make money is to go after not just men, and specifically in that ad, they really wanted to go after white men. Not in the text of the ad, but in the images if you watch it play by play. So we've gotten to the point where, hey, you want to make money? Really make people hate each other. And I'm apparently they believe this will work, and they know more about it than I do, so maybe it will. But I mean, I just can't imagine ever putting down money for a Gillette product again.
Well, could you think maybe they're targeting women since we make 85% of the purchasing products in our home, that maybe they're reaching out to us like, hey, men can do better. Men can be better, not just men. And I know it was, dumbing down of your behavior for older gentlemen, but for younger, prepubescent teens or young teenage boys, for them to see that ad, I didn't think it was a bad idea. I showed it to my two sons.
And you liked it? You personally liked the ad?
There's one part I didn't like about the TV sitcom where the guy was squeezing the maid's butt or motioning that he was doing that. I thought that was stupid because, as we've broken down, a few times there, that TV sitcom never existed.
Right, and then immediately after that, they cut to the audience, which is exclusively white men who are all laughing their heads off. Pretty much older white men. I think you're right that the ad, they said, hey, look, I think that was undoubtedly part of the calculation, that women would respond to this hatred of men and white men obviously more than men would. But I honestly, I'm a little baffled. I mean, I am baffled. When I'm watching I watched a lot of online commentary about it. One of the left-wing show Young Turks, they're featured on the ad, and they are livid that people are upset about the ad, even though on the first day it was about a 9-1 downvotes versus upvotes on YouTube. Now, after all the hullabaloo yesterday, now it's about 7-1. And then even on like a really left-wing paper like The Guardian in England, and this was produced in England, the ad by a company called Some Such, even there it's 2-1. The downvotes to the upvotes on the video. So the reaction, you're probably right. You're undoubtedly right that they're counting on men or women liking the message of this hatred. But I just don't see it. I stand corrected if their sales go up, but we'll see what happens.
Well, maybe when they followed up with a tutorial on the Knights of Columbus. Maybe that could be their next ad, featuring Kamala Harris or something like that. Another group that it's okay to as you said, induce hate in the direction of. With respect to the idea of the gentleman, part of it seems to me is just sort of taking a step back and saying, isn't it an amazing point that we are in our culture where you have some people saying, thank you to Gillette, Our Lady of Gillette, for instructing America and American men on how to be civilized beings.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, even the idea of advertising, we're going to educate you what's wrong with you, and here you go, and please take this lesson. Be better than the horrible person that you are. And as they say in the ad, we're not saying all men are bad. Some of them are good. And they actually use that. They say some are good. So now go out there and buy our products. Hey, they must know this is going to work. We'll see. I'll be baffled if it does. But I mean, the New York Times. This is hardly a fringe thing. The New York Times editorial board hired a woman for their board, Sarah Jeong, who has not one or two, but literally hundreds of tweets saying how much she hates men, in particular white men. She described them as she says they're genetically predisposed to being goblins groveling beneath the earth. I mean, that's a little much. That's about as mainstream as you get. New York Times editorial board in terms of the reach of their message.
Well, I mean, what the hell? We're about to have a march on this weekend, even though that has been, even though the DNC and all these left-wing groups have walked away from it because the anti-Semitism endemic to the P-Hat March is so high profile, so public now that they can't endure it. These other left-wing groups that would otherwise turn a blind eye to it, so they're pulling out. But you're still going to have tens of thousands, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of women running around in P-hats cheering Ashley Judd and Madonna on this weekend.
Please don't tell me Ashley Judd's coming back. But I wonder how many repeat customers that they're going to have. Like how many people are going to come back there at the march last year.
But my point is the fact it's happening. And it's like this is not, to your point, Doug, this is not a fringe New York Times editorial board. I mean, it's a populist movement. It's not just for, elites at high-minded, quote-unquote, high-minded institutions.
Yeah, and look at, I don't have a TV, but I happened to see one the other day, and I saw Matt Lauer is still apparently working at NBC. So there's not really, what are the repercussions to this? At least I thought it was him, who I saw.
They all look alike. Those white guys.
It is stunning, and we'll just have to sit back and wait and see.
Well,
how the market responds.
So I read the little script that you came up with as a counter ad, but I mean the point here, if the idea is to raise civilized young men to be civilized adult men, what's the model to follow if it's not the instructions provided by Gillette?
The model to follow. Now I work with Touchstone Magazine, and so the easy answer is the model to follow is Christ. And now that's a little bit too quick because the Bible, Scripture in general, lays out page after page of models of what is expected of men as men and as women as women. And we've followed that for 3,000 years. And it's only been really in the last 100 years that the wheels have really started to fall off of that. There's always been problems. But what's taken as axiomatic today wouldn't even been thought of. I mean, if you even went back to your most left-wing politicians of 15 years ago, none of them in a million years would have been walking around saying, I stand for men who cross-dress as women. And that's what we have to all be about today. So there's a way that's caught them up. There's no constraint, and you have to have something that constrains you in your life. That as gentlemen, that you're part of being a gentleman, or central to being a gentleman, is being It's having something higher than yourself as an autonomous man, that you owe an allegiance to something, and that's what we get to the church.
He is Doug Johnson. He's executive director of Touchstone Magazine, which you should check out. Highly recommend. Doug, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me on.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Get up and